postpartum depression. It's something that faith-based communities often overlook. So as I'm writing my book, Taming the Monster, I've reached out to a whole bunch of different communities, and I found this disturbing thing. People very often will say to you, just pray about it, you'll get stronger, you'll get through this, don't worry about it, it'll all be fine. Now, prayer is an incredibly powerful thing, and research does show us that people that are involved in faith-based community activities, their signs of postpartum depression definitely drop. But that's not enough. And so, as I was doing the research, I wanted to find out, did postpartum depression or any kind of depression exist in biblical times? And I found this fascinating story about Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. Now, for those of people who are familiar with this particular story, you will remember that Sarah really wanted to have a child, and this child was not forthcoming, and she grew impatient, even though as a couple they were promised that they would have a child. She ended up asking Abraham if he would like to take Hagar, her servant, as a second wife to have a child. And Hagar did conceive. There was a little bit of a dynamic, a bit of a squabble inside the family where Hagar was starting to treat Sarah quite badly, because in those days, not having a child was a really big deal. And so eventually came a time where Sarah did have her own child. And when he was weaned, which is roughly when the baby is about 2 to 3 years old, in those times, they had a big celebration. And Sarah was very concerned that Ishmael might inherit what she believed her son should inherit. And so she asked her husband to send the baby away. Or send the mother and the baby away. Now, I say baby because sometimes they refer to him as a boy, but he was actually older than that. And they went out into the wilderness. Abraham gave Hagar some water and food, and then she got to a place where she had run out of provisions. And it says in the text that she put her son down by a tree, and she walked away, and she started weeping, and she said, I cannot bear to see the boy die. Now, that's a really big moment, and I find I'm getting goosebumps about it, because when you're desperate, when you're a single parent and you don't have provisions and you are concerned about the future of you and your child, there is that moment of desperation. And sometimes we develop a sense of apathy when we are so depressed that we don't know what to do. In the story, the angel comes to her and asks her what she's doing, and she explains to him her predicament. And it says there that he opened her eyes. And when he did, she saw that there was indeed a well. Now, that I found very fascinating, because it tells me a story about her mental state, and very often our mental state. When we're depressed, sometimes we cannot even see the blessings in front of us, because we get overwhelmed by this brain fog, this panic, anxiety, and we cannot, as some people would say, see the wood for the trees. So what does that mean for your faith-based community? It means that you might have people inside your community that are blessed, but they cannot see it. They need to have you to be the bridge to help them through that difficult cycle. And another biblical lesson is that it always says to us that a strand of 3 cannot easily be broken. When one person falls down and they are alone, they are in trouble. But when there is a community around them that can lift them up, that makes a phenomenal difference. So how does this work for your faith-based community? Well, a lot of people do have premarital classes, and I found it quite intriguing. I spoke to someone the one day and said, would you like me to chat to you about postpartum depression? And the answer surprised me. The lady said to me that we have already got this premarital thing going on, and I don't think that we can pack more onto it. But here's an interesting fact. While 1 in 7, and some people say 1 in 5 women suffer from postpartum depression, 1 in 10 men also have it. It's not just a woman's problem. And research has also shown that if the man doesn't get the opportunity to bond with his wife and his baby in those early weeks, sometimes he becomes incredibly overwhelmed and he leaves the family. We sometimes demonize these men because they've left, but we don't really understand that their hormones are directly linked to ours. So when a man holds his child for the very first time, his testosterone levels drop. What that means is that nature is nudging him to be more empathetic. But what it also means is that he has now had a drop in testosterone, and besides having strong muscles and making them quick to react, and sometimes, if inappropriate, it can lead to aggression, what it means is that testosterone helps men with mental health. And unless we have conversations about this, we're putting families at risk, because men are feeling these kinds of emotions and they feel helpless. They don't know how to assist their wife, whose emotions are all over the place. They don't know how to settle, and they don't know how to add value. And because not enough men are speaking about it, that amplifies the problem. So if you are in a faith-based community and you don't have the resources to actually address the problem correctly, maybe what you should be doing is networking with other organizations. I found it very encouraging that in the States there is a church group that has got a network of a whole bunch of churches, so that when a mother faces an unplanned pregnancy, or perhaps she's abandoned by the father, she can reach out and find a church within her community that can support her. So isn't it really about time that as faith-based people we start speaking about these issues, that we start taking action? Because as we know, community makes a massive difference when it comes to dealing with postpartum depression, which is probably why it's a lot more prevalent now as we become isolated. Our parents are staying very far away from us. We move from provinces or states to other places, and then we find ourselves isolated. On a personal note, my church community was really wonderful in helping me when I was a single parent. But what they didn't understand is the utter loneliness that I felt. I used to go to church on a Sunday, and afterwards I'd speak to my faith-based community, my cell group, and say, "What are you doing after church today?" And they would always have the same answer: "We are going to have lunch with the family." Well, my family lived 1,200 kilometers away from me, and I came home every day with a child that was not able to talk to me. I watched reruns of soap operas the whole day, and I spent the whole day crying, and I didn't feel like I could reach out. It was a major catastrophic event that happened in my mental health that forced me to reach out. But perhaps as a faith-based community, you can be a bit more proactive. You can find out about postpartum depression, speak to experts, speak to parents, and find out how to have inclusive spiritual care that will help them to alleviate that loneliness and keep families together.